Any religion or any faith is basically defined by what they believe about God and what they believe God requires. So I want to give you a taste of Methodism and what we believe about God and what we believe God requires of us, beginning with what we believe about God. The underlying foundational concept for all we believe about God is grace. We believe that God's love was first, that God's love started everything. It was out of love that God created and formed and shaped us. It was out of love that God sent his only Son, Jesus Christ, for our sakes, so that we might be restored in our relationship to him. That grace sets the tone, the groundwork for everything that happens in our lives and indeed in the history of the entire world. Now there are three ways that we think God works through grace, that grace is active in our lives. The first is what we call pre-venient. Pre-venient literally means to go before life. That God's love was before we even knew we needed that love. That God set the tone and the stage for that. Paul says that even while we were sinners, Jesus Christ died for us, and that proves his love for us. So God didn't wait till we were ready or wait till we were acceptable. God set the tone and reached out to us first, and we respond to God. That God's grace is what calls us home, so to speak. And that can happen in a myriad of ways in our life. We can fall away from God, and maybe a friend says something to us about a need for a relationship, or we read something or see something, and that spark of a desire comes to us, realizing we need something more in our lives. We need something deeper, more meaningful in our lives, that there's something missing. And we call that a God-shaped hole. And we think that what God is doing is calling us home, constantly seeking us out and searching for us. And that's grace. That's grace that leads us to a relationship with Jesus Christ. And then, of course, when we accept that relationship with Jesus Christ, we receive the forgiveness of sins and the renewal of life that Jesus talks about. We call that justifying grace, just as if I'd never sinned. The Bible tells us that if we confess our sins, that he's faithful and he's just, and he will forgive us of our sins. And that justifying grace is what changes us and makes us a new creation, as Paul calls us, and restores us into a right relationship with God. And of course, the third aspect of grace is sanctifying grace. That when we accept Jesus, God's not done with us. That he formed us and shaped us into his image. That God had dreams for what human potential and human beings, a fully human person, could be. And God still has that dream for us. And so, sanctifying grace is the way that God works in our life to continually draw us closer and in a deeper relationship, and continually help us to be more like Jesus Christ. And what that is like is that our life then becomes focused around love. In fact, John Wesley said, the founder of the Methodist Church, that our goal should be to be perfect in love. That everything we do be motivated by love. Our interactions with God, our interactions with other people, our interactions with ourselves and our belief in ourselves, motivated by love. Now, these don't just happen once in our life. All three of these aspects of grace can be present at any one time. We can stray. We can wander away from God. We can get a little busy with other things and lose our way. And I think in those moments, God calls us back. It can happen in the form of a friend calling us and telling us they've missed us at church, or they've missed us at small group, or are you okay? All those little ways that God speaks to us and calls us back home. So those are present in our life, throughout our life. And justifying grace. We all make mistakes. We all sin. We all fall short of the glory of God. But if we ask for forgiveness, we will receive that forgiveness. And will be justified and return to a right and whole relationship with God. And that we need all of our life. And sanctifying grace. God's always challenging us to grow and to develop our faith, to take it deeper, to draw into a deeper relationship with our Creator and with the people around us. That's key to having a vital and meaningful life. And we learn as time goes on. We're challenged to grow deeper in different ways. That's God's sanctifying grace, continually to work through us, to take that self-interest, which tends to be at the center of our lives, and move it further and further to the peripheral, and hopefully eventually out of the way, so that we then act in everything we do out of love for God, love for others, and love for ourselves. It's an amazing love, as the song says. How can it be that you, my God, would die for me? That's the foundation of all that we do as Methodists. Grace, God's grace, is the foundation for all that we believe about God.